Welcome, friends. Now we will be learning React together. The format has changed a little as we discussed in the community. The first day I pre-record the lectures, like I publish them on YouTube and you can watch them as you want. Then any questions you have the next day, we can discuss live, whether through chatting or any kind of like if you want to speak your concerns, stuff like that, then you can just join the discourse community and ask your questions. Now, before getting into React, there are some rules that I would like to discuss with you, rules for learning difficult code. Now, these are not like, set in stone. They change from a person to another. However, for me, it was like that. When there was a very difficult concept like I couldn't understand. For example, in ES6 JavaScript, there are things like promises. There are things like, when you do full stack web dev, authentication, Redux, stuff like that. They were very difficult to understand. And my rule is never try to learn such difficult concepts in one set or in one day. At least distribute it in 4 days to learn. The first day, just read or watch. Like read, watch, mimic. This is your first day. Choose your favorite YouTuber, streamer, or go to GitHub or Full Stack Overflow. Is it Stack Overflow or Full Stack Overflow? Okay, maybe Stack Overflow. So just mimic it. Read, try to understand. Never expect to understand in one set. And mimic it. The second day, try it on your own. However, I warn you that you would need to refer to your source, that you would need, for example, if you are reading on MDN, you need to go back to MDN to practice this concept. Then read the definition again and see how much you understand. The third day, try to do it on your own. Now, it's okay to need like other sources, like I've seen no programmer who doesn't need other source when trying to create or make an application. That's unbelievable if you say like, I'm doing this on my own without Google, without Full Stack Overflow, without GitHub or other sources. But try to see how much you understand on that day. Then wait a week or two and do it again. Like once again, for example, you are learning promises. You read and watch, mimic, then you try to do it on your own. You read again, then try without help. Then after a week or two, do it on your own again. Once again, you might need other sources. You might refer to your, the source that you've learned from in the beginning. However, at that stage, you will see that you wouldn't have any problem with this concept of tomorrow that appears on your screen. Or if you had a job like telling you do this for us, then you see that you don't have much of a difficulties with that concept. Now, there are some principles, of course, for junior developers, and these principles are all on my own. Of course, I think I haven't told you that I'm a self-taught web developer. My background had nothing to do with development when I started. So I've realized certain things that I'd like to share with you. And the first is balance between learning and doing. Trust me, no matter how much you learn, there are always new things. There are always like other things to learn. Do not like learn everything. When you learn React, don't immediately try Redux, Node, Merge Stack, stuff like that. Just learn React and learn it well and do something with React. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have limited capabilities or stuff like that. No one expects you to do like to build Facebook on one day or something like that. Just build something very simple. But when you learn, try to do something as well. And that's a very good rule for me. Second rule is try to understand and explain what you are using. Now, this is very important because Often as junior developers, we try to mimic after the other people so much that we think that we know the technology, but we don't. Say you are implementing an authentication. Please take notes. Take notes about your steps, like step 1 I do that, step 2 I do that. Now, you might not refer to these notes. However, when you do it once, twice, 3 times, and you take notes, you see that you understand this technology better. And at the end, try to do it like, the other way, like another way. Try to use another way, not just the standard way that you've been told. And you'll see that your learning capacity extends by so much. And the third principle, which is very, very important, do not procrastinate. Do not do with what you know. Now, this is an extension of the first rule. Like sometimes you learn React, then you procrastinate because you think that the application that you need to build with React requires like learning Node.js, learning MongoDB, and maybe sometimes Redis or an SQL database, and then authentication, then relational stuff. I mean, there are thousands of, code pieces to learn when you are building an application. However, try to use like ready-made templates, stuff like that. For example, if you just know React, try to use a CMS as your data source. If you know React well, then it will be easy for you. Do not learn Node just because you want to build something in the backend. But first learn the React well, then when you are done with it, you can learn Node and other technologies. But do not procrastinate and build something with it. Trust me, you'll feel better. Now, the fourth rule is separate concerns, learn things on their own. And now this is very important because I see many like junior developers learn things together. Like, let's do a MERN application, React, MongoDB, MySQL, and Express. And this is very difficult for a junior developer to master all these like technologies together. This is good for a senior developer, like to just build an application because he understands the fundamentals of programming, how databases, created, how backend works, services, and like he's done all these with the other technology and sometimes with 2 or 3 technologies. So he can like just do it with React in no time if he learns React. However, as a junior developer, I think it's not a very good practice to try to learn things like together. Now, disappointment should not hinder you. Like as a junior developer, as a programmer in general, at first you will get disappointed a lot. You will see concepts that you have no idea, that you will squeeze your mind and you don't understand. You will say like, this is not for me. I'm not this kind of a person. Maybe I don't have a math background, or I just can't do it. Stuff like that shouldn't hinder you. Trust me. There are concepts. Just read about it. Try to mimic it. Then leave it. Another day, try to do it again, but refer to your source. Another day, try to do it again. If you need, then refer to the source, like the principles, the rules I told you. Then after a couple of tries, you see even the most difficult like programming concepts can be explained very simply, and you can even teach other people, not just learn your own. So this is a very good like principle to to follow. With that, let's see what React is. Now, React is an open source front-end JavaScript library for building UIs, maintained by Facebook and a group of independent developers. React uses Virtual DOM to make interaction with the website faster. Now, this makes no sense like for a starter or a junior developer. What are these all terms? Now, even as a general rule, I'm sure in the undergrad you will learn that you have to dissect definitions to their parts and try to understand like Just like programming, try to separate your concerns and understand each on their own to understand the definition. Now, we'll be coding a lot, don't worry. However, it's important to have an idea about what you are doing. Then when at the end of the course, when we will refer to this definition, you will see how easy it is. For now, let's just dissect this definition. What's a library? Library is a code written for you that you can use it. What does it mean? Say you want to format all the dates that you have. For example, you have a database or an application which shows which employee joined your company at which date, and the date when you are writing it in a simple vanilla JavaScript, it's very complicated. It's a whole, excuse me, it's a whole string like with milliseconds and stuff like that. And if you do it on your own, if you try to like organize in a user-friendly fashion this date, it will be very difficult because it requires too much code for such a simple job. Now, a library does this complicated task one time and does it well, then gives you a method. Like this library does it in a function, in a complicated function. However, makes this function accessible with just one argument or some stuff like that. Now, you just have to use one word, one function, the name of the function, with the date that you have, then it will be like magically you have this well-written code without even trying to understand the subject. Now, library is like that. Like there are thousands of JavaScript libraries doing such work for you, and you can't just be an expert in everything. You can't be an expert in GIS. You can't be an expert in backend, in frontend, in security, in styling, things like that. So these libraries, most of them are written by very well-known experts, and they know what they are doing, and it's better to use them. Now, React is such a library. It's strange for now to say that, but React is a library. Now, what's open source? Well, open source is a project where individual developers can read, modify, update, and add features according to a set of rules. Now, there are people who believe that software should be free, all of it. However, most of these people work on open source projects. Open source projects are projects that you can see the code base. Like if you want to understand React, the engine behind React, you can see it because it's open source. You can add features when you get good at JavaScript and other programming languages that React created with. I think it's just JavaScript. I have no idea. I haven't watched it. You can add features according to a set of rules. Now, there are, of course, stages where you do like, where you propose, and if it's accepted, then you're right. If it's accepted, then, stage by stage, your feature will become a part of React. So this is like open source. DOM is a very interesting concept, however, very difficult. I would like you to imagine a tree. Because when JavaScript deals with HTML files, it's called DOM. Now, DOM, I think I got a phone call, but let's just leave it for now. DOM is distracted me, sorry. So when JavaScript interacts with HTML, it creates a tree of nodes. Say, this tree that, is it this part or that? This tree, yeah. It has elements. For example, the tree is your HTML file. Then you have body. You have, HTML at the root, body, and then other parts. For example, paragraph, heading. These stuff you understand, I hope. But when JavaScript, when the document object model, that is DOM, JavaScript, when interacts with DOM, with this tree, it updates everything. For example, with JavaScript, you say like get element by ID, and you change a simple paragraph, the content of this simple paragraph. suddenly all of your tree, all of your HTML document is updated. And this is not very good for performance. This is not very good for anything really, because any modern website requires a lot of updates. And if every time you check some things, the whole application updates, then it's not a very good way of going about it. Now, there was a library to make JavaScript work easier. There is still. It's called jQuery, and the founder of jQuery says it is like that. Like JavaScript is really not that performant to deal with, HTML and document object model. To solve this problem, engineers in Facebook created this React, which React, according to some algorithm, deals with the virtual DOM instead of DOM. Let's say you have the HTML, the tree, the document object model. You take a blueprint of this tree. Then you change the tree piece by piece. Like if I need to change this paragraph, only change this paragraph. Now this is the whole concept of virtual DOM. Like, don't try to make things more difficult than they are, because sometimes you don't even need these things. Just understand that the importance of React is that it creates a virtual DOM. A virtual DOM, instead of interacting directly with the DOM, with the HTML, it interacts with a JS object, which is a DOM blueprint, then changes it part by part. During this change, you can change your application, you can change your HTML, but only this part is updated. And this is very important for performance, because as later we will see, applications take time to update. Now this is the concept of DOM, and of course tomorrow in the live stream you can discuss it if you wanted more explanation. What's the UI? UI is a user interface. UI is what you see when you visit a website. Now, UI is not built by you. It's not designed by you as a developer. No matter if you're a junior, if you're a senior engineer, or anything else. UI is built by designers or artists. They create buttons, they create icons, they create logos, they create the whole entire prototype or wireframe of the website. They decide on colors, on the spacing, padding, and stuff like that. At the end, you have, as the picture on the right, you have a theme that you have to build. However, as a developer, your work is to build this theme with code, not with Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that. That's the job of a designer, to create the UI. Your job is to develop the UI. Now, what's a framework? A framework is a structured way of building applications. Now, we said library solves small solutions, gives you a method to solve a small solution, but framework is a wholesome solution. For example, a framework says okay, I'm a framework to build web applications. It gives you a certain structure that your HTML should be here, your CSS should be here, your JavaScript should be here, and here's how you build your conditional stuff like that. Here's how you write your JavaScript, things like that. It's a wholesome solution. However, you don't have as much freedom as a library. Library, you just use it whenever you need it, and you can, you have freedom to do whatever you do. But a framework is more limited. Of course, now there are pros and cons for everything, and there are pros of cons for using a library and a framework. Actually, they are not they do not replace each other. However, in case of React, it's a bit tricky, because React is mostly used like a framework rather than a library. Now, let's see what's the difference between library and a framework. As we said, framework is a wholesome solution, so it gives you a blueprint to the application. Say we have a car. Now, the picture on the left, you have a car where it's said that where the engine should be, where the steering wheel, where the mirrors, where the wheels, how big the wheels should be, the tires and stuff like that. So you have a blueprint of how to build this car and what to use to build it. However, the picture in the right, it's like a library. You can choose your parts. Like it tells you, build this, you need this and this, but you are free what kind of tires to choose, what kind of body, what kind of engine and stuff like that. You can, after all, assemble a whole certain new concept with the library. Like you could just build something very new with the library. But with a framework, it's easier to work, but it's, you know, sometimes you don't have as much freedom. However, most websites which people build, like even senior programmers, can be built really either with React or with frameworks like Angular or Vue or things like that. So don't worry too much about, just understand what does it mean. Now, React is also, as I said, like a framework, because really there's a convention where you build your application according to this convention, how to, you know, use your JavaScript, JSX, things like that. And we will study this like convention for quite a long time, but just understand that React is not a simple library. At the end of the course, we will ask this question, whether React is really a library or a framework. Now, why React? Actually, yesterday I was asked this question in this new social media network called Dutch House. I think React, when you understand it, it's very easy. Like it's really just like JavaScript. It's very simple to use. You have a freedom to use it, you know, use JavaScript like as you want. Whether you use a name it function, you know, arrow function, or you use it as, you know, whatever you want. React is very used to customize. It's performant. Now it's a very, very important point, that performance always a deciding factor. Is it a deciding or a decisive? So it's a factor that you make your decision when you build an application. How performant is it? And now there are some people who say React is not that fast, and it's true. But as you get better at React, you know how to make it faster. But it's much more performant in most of the other frameworks and libraries. It's popular. It's very popular. You can just go to GitHub to see them, or other platforms to see how people rank React, how developers like give it how many stars and things like that. And another factor for decision making is how many jobs are available in your local market. For example, if you live in New Delhi or in Ahmedabad, was it a city, or I just made it up? I think it's in Pakistan or in Iran. So you go to your Indeed, you change your location to your local city, then you see how many jobs do you have in React, in Angular, and in Vue or Svelte or something like that, or .NET Framework, anything like that, and you choose according to that. Please bear in mind that it's very important. No matter how good a technology is, if it's not used in your local market, it shouldn't matter to you that much. Unless you want to work remotely, which is possible nowadays. Now, React has various applications. It's not only on the web. You can literally build smartphone applications, like native smartphone application for both iOS. It's not actually native, it's just called native. But for both iOS and Android with React. You can even, I saw a library recently called React Desktop, which means you can build desktop components for Mac or Windows or Linux with React. That means so long that you have the SDK or the API that then you can build the front end of your software with React. And I pray that this library becomes better, because I love to build just for trial an application, a software with React. It's always evolving. Every year React becomes better. I remember when it was just like, classes, it wasn't as interesting for me, but then they introduced hooks and make it more functional, and I really like it right now. So it becomes better and better. Now there are alternatives, and please don't be like, when you learn a technology, don't always throw a holy war on why your technology is the best or why everyone should use it, because it's not true. Like, technologies have use cases, and you can always use a different technology when the use case comes up. And there are like 2 to 3, actually there's one very good like alternative for React, which is Angular. However, Angular is very opinionated, a bit bulky in my opinion, but there are applications, there are websites, web applications, which is better to be built with Angular as a wholesome solution, not with React. And when you learn a language well like JavaScript, or a framework or library well like React, it's very easy to just transfer your knowledge to Angular or Vue. Like, it's really just a junior developer who could, need months and months to learn a library. A senior developer, a person who has 5 years experience in any programming language, he can easily like adapt or adopt. I have no idea. You can easily like consume these new libraries, just digest them as they come up. And another like alternative is Vue. Vue is a framework, very easy to use. Honestly, for junior developers, I will always like recommend Vue if they don't like React. So it's easí to understand and you can use it. Svelte is a very new one, and it's a very interesting framework. Svelte doesn't work on virtual DOM, I think. It works directly on the DOM, but still very performant. So I want to like see what is it about Svelte that makes it performant, and I would very much like to try it. Now there is this factor for Svelte, like the curiosity factor. Many programmers try it, so bear in mind that it could just be popular in one day. But what to look for when, for example, tomorrow you get hired to join your job company, and they tell you like, okay, we have a new client who wants this application, what to choose. Now always like consider many things in an application, like performance. How performant is this library for this sort of application? Your needs, for example, if your library or application needs GIS, a system like Google Maps, you really needed to build it with React or Angular or another technology. What should be in the backend, stuff like that. Does this backend, for example, interact well with your library in the front end? Things like that. Scalability. In the modern world, you always have to think modular. Now, what is it? What does it mean to think modular? Like, modularity is building the whole system together, but could like divide them easily. For example, you want to build a whole building. A modularity in engineering could be that anytime you want, you could just extract one simple apartment from this building and replace it with another apartment. Now in programming, this is much easier, because what you do is you build components independently. Now when you decide to make an application, please make your decision to bear in mind that this application will be evolving, and you need to add features no matter whatever tech stack you use. One day the client comes and says, I saw this feature on this website and I like to add it. And you have to be able to easily make your application in the front end scalable. Now scalability is a whole like concepts for backend, for servers, for databases, things like that. But what's important is React is really highly scalable. Like you can really extend it as you want. You can use it even as a micro front end, like build many applications with React. That's why we call it a library, because you can use it as much as you want in React. It's not a framework. It is a framework. It's a library that is used like a framework. Now, ratings and popularity. Remember, when you use a tech stack, sometimes you use it because it's easy. It's it does the work in 2 or 3 days. Then, but you see the popularity for this library is not that much. It means it's not. Maybe developers don't see it as good. Then the rating is not high. Then you see it's not updated. Then you see there's a problem down the road, like halfway. You see there's a problem that you cannot solve. So always try to use a more popular, more well rated, or things like that. Like consider the market to see what developers are using, then try to choose one of those. Like don't choose just a niche, something that just came up, there's a hype around it, and that will not be a good experience, I think. Try to consider whether it's open source or not. Many technologies like say they're open source, but you see like when you want to extend it with a plugin or something like that, then that's not open source because they want payment for that. So try to evaluate these concepts. Now, what we learned in this initial introduction course, we learned the definition of React. We learned what is a library. We should have learned what's a framework, what's UI, what's open source, what's DOM, and what's virtual DOM. Please, as I said, bear in mind some of these concepts might be a bit difficult, but tomorrow we will discuss it hopefully. And you can learn like step by step. At the end of the course you will be revisiting these concepts, all the what we learned concepts. We will make it in one cheat sheet, and perhaps even we will do a test to see how much you've learned. That's all for today. I really appreciate you coming to the channel, and yeah, thank you very much.